I started a true crime channel and uncovered haunted movie theaters with a disturbing secret. I never should have opened that door. I can still feel the cold pressing against my skin like a warning. The chill crept in the moment I stepped into the old theater. Dust hung thick in the air, swirling in the faint light. It smelled like rotting popcorn and forgotten dreams. I was supposed to be filming an episode, but this place? It felt wrong. Normally, I'd be excited. I'd planned to explore the haunted history of this theater. Built in the 1920s, it had a reputation. Stories of shadows moving in the corners, whispers in the night. They said patrons felt cold hands on their shoulders. They said the screen flickered with images of people who had vanished. But as I wandered deeper into the darkness, that excitement turned to dread. The silence was oppressive. I could almost hear my heart beating. Then there it was, a creak above me. I froze. My breath hitched as I looked up. The balcony loomed like a watchful ghost. Shadows danced under the faded lights. My mind raced. It was silly. I was alone, right? But the air felt alive, electric, charged with something unseen. I turned, my flashlight beam cutting through the dark. Something moved behind me, just out of sight. My chest tightened. "Hey!" I called out, my voice trembling. No response. Only the sound of my own breathing, quick and shallow. The floor beneath me felt uneven, as if it held secrets too heavy to share. Another noise. A soft thump. My heart raced. Something or someone was up there. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I stepped back, the chill growing. My hands trembled as I gripped my flashlight tighter. Was it just the wind? An old building settling? I wanted to turn and run, but curiosity rooted me to the spot. Suddenly, the lights flickered, pulsing like a heartbeat. My heart skipped. Anthena voice. A whisper, clear as day, "Get out!" My blood ran cold. That wasn't my imagination. Panic surged in me like a tidal wave. I turned, ready to bolt for the exit, when the door slammed shut behind me with a deafening bang. I spun around, my pulse pounding in my ears. The shadows seemed to stretch and bend, dark shapes moving closer. I was trapped. My breath came in quick gasps. Was this the end of my story? What waited in the dark? I didn't know. All I knew was a figure emerged from the shadows, its watchful eyes locked onto mine. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. My eyes strained against the darkness, trying to make sense of the shape that emerged from the shadows. It stood there as silhouette, still and menacing, as if waiting for me to scream, to run, or perhaps to stay right where I was. My flashlight flickered again, the beam becoming erratic as if the very air around me conspired to plunge me into darkness. "Who's there?" I whispered, my voice barely above a shaky breath. I felt ridiculous. I was supposed to be bold, to face the frightening stories head-on. But this was beyond any urban legend. The figure took a step forward, an unnatural glide that sent a chill racing down my spine. My instincts screamed at me to flee, but my legs were petrified, rooted to the spot that a soft gasp escaped from its lips, a sound that was both a warning and a beckoning. In the dim light, I saw the contours of what might have been a face pale, sunken, with eyes that seemed to absorb the flickering light rather than reflect it. And then the air was filled with a stench, a putrid mix of decay and burnt popcorn, even more nauseating than before. It wrapped around me, heavy and suffocating. "Get out while you can," it rasped, the words dripping with an ancient bitterness. The echo of its voice reverberated around the empty theater, sending flutters of panic through me. suddenly, my flashlight flickered one last time and extinguished, leaving me in complete darkness. Complete and absolute blackness. My breath caught in my throat as my heart thundered. My hands scrambled against the wall, searching for a way to escape, but I could feel the pressure building, the shadows thickening around me as if closing in like the teeth of a predator. A rustling sound rose from the depths of the theater, followed by the unmistakable sound of nails scratching against wood. Desperate, frantic. It sent a shiver creeping up my spine. I imagined dozens of those figures, all watching me, clawing to break free from the dark corners. The chilling thought that I wasn't the first to be ensnared here gnawed at my mind. Turn around, the figure ordered, the malevolence bled into the very command. It felt more like an instinct than a request, and against my better judgment, I obeyed. Slowly, I turned, feeling the wall press coolly against my back. What I saw sent shudders coursing through me. The theater was alive, walls pulsating as if the very structure was breathing. On the screen, flickering images swirled, ghostly scenes of laughter and joy warped into agony and despair. I blinked, trying to process it all, when I realized the shadows around me were no longer still. They began to stretch and shift, becoming more defined, more threatening. Forms flickered into and out of existence with furious speed. They were trapped souls, faces contorted with pain, mouths opening in silent screams for liberation. Help us, they wailed in unison, their voices echoing like a haunting chorus. My mind was unraveling, grappling with a surge of burgeoning fear. I couldn't distinguish the past from the present, perhaps it was all one and the same. Leave her. The figure yelled, its voice rising in pitch, sharp as broken glass. A sudden warmth brushed against my cheek as its icy breath clashed with the warmth of my panic. I staggered backward, ready to flee, but the void felt hungry behind me, its pull relentless. Desperation surged within me as I lunged toward the exit. The air crackled with anger, and a deafening slam echoed as spectral hands burst forth from the ground, gripping at my ankles, clawing, dragging me back toward the abyss. I screamed, feeling the cold fingers of the damned tighten their grip. Help! I cried, my voice splintering into nothingness as I fought against unseen forces dragging me down. I dug my heels into the ground, pushing forward with all my might. And then, just as swiftly as it began, the grip vanished. I stumbled, sprawling forward into dizzying light as the door swung ajar behind me. My heart raced with hope. I dashed toward it, nearly tumbling headfirst into the hallway beyond, but as I cast one final glance back, frozen in the threshold of despair, I saw them. The figures, now fully formed, filling the theater, their hollow eyes wide and haunting as they gazed at me. Stay with us, they whispered in terrifying synchronicity, their chorus intertwining like a dark promise, taunting the lingering threads of hope in my mind. Before I could move, the door slammed shut once more, and the shadows surged, forming a wall of agony against my escape. That I was not alone. Not anymore. The theater had claimed another soul, and I could feel its insatiable hunger. As I turned, my heart sinking, I realized I hadn't escaped. I had merely stepped into a new realm of terror, where time held no meaning and darkness had a will of its own. The walls began to pulse again, and I realized with mounting dread that now, I was adrift among the damned, just like them. A soft voice filled the air, drenched in urgency. There's still time. You can escape. But in that moment, the shadows moved closer, enveloping my surroundings. I wasn't sure who to trust, whether that voice was a savior or another invitation to the abyss. Which door? I shouted desperately, seeking direction amidst the encroaching darkness, and then, silence fell. The silence was stifling, pressing down on my chest like a weight I couldn't shake. It took only a moment for the shadows to coalesce before me, shifting into a smothering blanket that swallowed the remaining light. My instinct screamed at me to run, yet there I was, gripped by the tension between fear and the desperate need to know. Quickly. To your left. The voice rang out again, clearer this time, and I looked toward the source. A figure emerged from the thickening fog, their edges blurring like the remnants of a dream. They wore a tattered, antique gown that looked like it had been secondhand from a bygone era, time far removed from mine. Follow me. They beckoned urgently, their eyes alight with an otherworldly glow. I hesitated, torn between the instinctive dread of the shadows and the glimmer of hope this figure offered. "There's a way out," they urged, glancing nervously at the mass of twisted darkness coiling around us. With no time to waste, I darted toward them. The air felt alive with anticipation, as if the shadows were aware of my fleeting chance. As I moved, the almost sentient darkness surged, reaching for me with all the ferocity of a gale, but I summoned every ounce of strength to step beside the figure. Go. Now! They cried, and I sprinted down the narrow corridor that had appeared, each step echoing strangely against a backdrop of despair. The walls pressed in closer, almost as if they wanted to seal my fate alongside those unseen, buried horrors. Dim flickering lights just above me bathed the way in a sickly hue, revealing peeling paint and old movie posters, each one a haunting glimpse into stories long forgotten. The horror of the surroundings made my blood run cold, yet behind us, the sound of shuffling grew louder, an army of the Forsaken moving in pursuit. "Keep moving," the figure urged again, their presence both a comfort and a puzzle. "Who are you?" I gasped, stealing a glance back while I sprinted. The shadows writhed, disturbed by our flight, while faces materialized in the darkness, ghastly visages twisted with palpable agony. "In one of the lost," they admitted, voice trembling. "I thought I was free, but the theater has its hold on me." "You must leave before it gets you too." I felt the weight of their despair, yet at that moment, I couldn't afford to dwell. I pressed on, heart racing, instinct screaming that any moment could be my last. As we grasped the edge of the hallway, the exit loomed before us, an oasis against the oppressive gloom. Relief surged through me, and I reached for the door handle, palms sweaty, trembling with anticipation, but just as my fingers brushed the cool metal, a horrifying crack echoed behind me, a cacophony of nails scratching furiously against wood, accompanied by a guttural roar that froze the blood in my veins. The figure beside me gasped, their expression morphing from urgency to sheer terror. "We need to run." The edge of desperation was palpable in their voice and, before I could process their words, a sudden surge of shadows erupted from the hallway we had traversed, racing toward us with a deafening whirl. My heart pounded in my chest as I lunged forward, past the door, expectation faltering when I found myself tumbling onto the cold, hard ground of the theater lobby. The silence outside seemed deafening, a deceptive calm before inevitable chaos. The figure slipped into the void behind me, and I turned, frozen as the darkness shuddered and swelled, displacing air around me. "No!" I cried, realizing too late that the entity had pulled them back, consuming what light they had brought with them. But then, as the final shrieks faded into the gloom, a new sound emerged, an unnerving, metallic clicking as if something heavy was being rolled out, followed by a low, rhythmic thrum that echoed from deep within the recesses of the theater. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. It was familiar. It was the sound of a projector flickering to life. Instinctively, I turned toward the theater doors, the dread coiling in my stomach tightening its grip. A film reel, a sinister oubliette beckoned within. The allure of the screen, an entrancing yet terrifying specter of what lay beyond. As the thrum intensified, and images began flickering across the wall in violent succession, I caught glimpses of faces, familiar faces. Friends, family members, all twisted into expressions of horror. The memories pierced through me as despair clawed at my heart. I was rooted to the floor, transfixed by the gruesome spectacle unfolding, frantically searching for any semblance of the figure that had guided me, wondering if they were lost forever, doomed to join those projections in their torment. Before I could glimpse any more, the lobby doors slammed shut, echoing with an ominous finality. And then, the screen pulsed brightly, illuminating a new figure stepping into view. This one looked like me. Or someone like me, a twisted reflection of my own self, mouth stretching into an impossibly wide grin that sent shivers through me. "Welcome back," it hissed. As I turned in horror to flee, the grips of icy hands seized me from behind, pulling me back toward the depths of the theater. The shadows enveloped me, and with my final scream echoing into the void, I knew I had become another lost soul within the cursed walls, caught between the flickering light of salvation and the dark promise of oblivion. I awoke with a jolt, cold sweat slicking my skin, heart hammering wildly against my ribs. The theater lobby was gone, replaced by the dank, suffocating stillness of my bedroom, a familiar prison. I struggled to catch my breath, desperately trying to shake off the remnants of that twisted dream. But the images clung to me like cobwebs, and within them, a fragmented memory lurked, whispering warnings I couldn't quite grasp. The software of my laptop filled the space, drawing my attention. On the corner of my desk, the screen flickered to Life Me True Crime channel. ID started it months ago, diving into dark stories from true crime thrillers to urban legends. But now, the lines between the horrific tales I shared in my own life had begun to blur, creeping me out in a way that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Swallowing the unease, I pushed myself up. I had planned to review another haunted theater soon, this time one that had been reputed as a site of notorious tragedies. I shivered, recalling the name, the Wraith Theater. I could still hear the gravelly voice of the host ID interviewed last week, speaking about the countless disappearances linked to the place, his eyes wide with fear as he recounted urban legends of cursed movie nights, ghostly projections of the past playing endlessly on the screen. Just another spooky story, ID shrugged at the time, but the events of my dream nagged at me now. I shook my head, dismissing the connection as paranoia. I opened my laptop, eager to channel my fear into content, yet feeling a dread that sunk deep in my gut, a premonition I couldn't shake. I loaded the footage of my last exploration into the theater's grainy illumination of shock and shadows. As I watched myself narrate the history of the Wraith Theater, a chill settled over my shoulders. The auditorium appeared empty, but something felt alive in the footage, lurking just beyond the visible spectrum. Each frame flickered like the echo of a long-forgotten scream. Halfway through, the screensaver kicked in, pulling me away from my thoughts. I tried to shake the unease but couldn't help clicking on a link to an online forum dedicated to haunted locations. As I scrolled through posts, a particular thread caught my attention: the Wraith Theater, A Soul's Lament. With a heavy heart, I started reading, my skin prickling with each word. Tales of lost spirits, echoing cries, and a chilling warning: do not visit without offering your truth. The theater demands sacrifice. I scoffed at the idea. There's no such thing as a true sacrifice or a theater that holds secrets just waiting to be unveiled. But another post jolted me to the core. It contained still images captured inside the theater, ghosts or spirits caught mid-scream as the projector whirred to life. Strains of laughter echoed in my mind as I scrolled down, the faces contorted in agony hauntingly familiar, each a warped reflection of me or someone I knew. Focus, focus, I murmured, trying to center myself. I shut the laptop, forcing myself to breathe deeply. But my heart was racing, the familiar thrum of the projector pulsing in my ears, the echo of someone pleading for help. The thought made me wince, an ache blooming deep within the pit of my chest. Ignoring my trepidation, I decided that I would visit the Wraith Theater the next day. After all, if any secrets were to be revealed, would document them. Perhaps there was closure to be achieved, something inherently thrilling in exposing a hidden truth. Night fell, casting my room in shadows, and beneath the faint glow of the moon, I settled in bed. Sleep eluded me as the feeling of being watched crept back, a weight pressing down against my chest again, stifling me. I turned the lights off, hoping to draw some calm from the dark, but the atmosphere grew heavier, oppressive. A rattle echoed from the outside, drawing me to the window. Peering out, the clouds moved as though alive, swirling chaotically above the ground, forming dark shapes that made my heart race. I stumbled back, unease crawling along my spine, prickling my skin, and then, I heard a soft, familiar whistle from within my room. Not from my laptop but somewhere deeper, more intimate. At first, I thought it was my imagination, but then I noticed that the noise somewhat resembled a lullaby, one I couldn't quite place. It grew louder, reverberating through the walls until I could almost make out words. "You shouldn't have come back," it sang. A longing seeped in despair, an echo of a voice I recognized but had tried to forget. Cold panic surged through me as fleeting shadows tabulated around the corners of my room. "Get out!" I shouted, leaping from the edge of my bed, but a sudden force gripped my ankle, pulling me back down. The once familiar space now transformed into a stage of horror. With somber realization, the voice became crystal clear. "We're waiting for you, just like you've always waited for us." And as the lights flickered ominously, the shadowy figures began to emerge around me, their fingers outstretched as if beckoning me to join the cursed show. My eyes widened in horror as another projection activated across the wall, images and faces I recognized, yet twisted and grim, pleading for my escape, each adorned with that same wide, malicious grin that mirrored the figure from my dreams. I froze, caught between the realization that I had inadvertently opened the door to something far darker and my primal instinct to flee. But just as I struggled to understand how to break free from this nightmare, the window shattered with ethereal laughter, and a chilling voice whispered, "Welcome back to the theater. We've saved you a seat." That I in an instant, the grip on my ankle tightened, shadows pulling me toward the floor, dark murmurs swarming, celebrating the return of another chosen soul. And as I sank deeper into the inescapable darkness, I understood in this game, I had unwittingly become part of a macabre performance, the true crime unfolding right in front of me, leaving the audience in captive horror as I fought against the inevitable. My heart thudded furiously as I flailed against the grasp of the shadows, the air thickening with despair around me. I beat my hands against the unseen force, a primal instinct bubbling within me, urging me to survive. But their grip was relentless, icy fingers entwining around my limbs, dragging me deeper into the suffocating darkness, into the heart of the Wraith Theater itself. Images flashed through my mind, the laughter of a crowd, the flicker of dying film, faces twisted in agony and joy, all blurred into a collage of dread. I realized that this was not merely an audience, it was a congregation of tormented souls bound to the theater, their collective pain manifesting in me. A part of me understood that they were the remnants of stories claimed by this cursed place, victims of the malevolent history I had tried so hard to explore. "Join us." They whispered in unison, a symphony of wails and sighs, echoing through the once familiar space of my bedroom. My vision blurred, the lines between reality and nightmare tangling as I felt myself being pulled, and then the world gave way, falling Nyo, tumbling through an inky void. I suddenly found myself sprawled on a cold, crumbling floor. The air crackled with static, and all around me, the curse of the Wraith Theater materialized. Dim light flickered like dying gasps, illuminating the grotesque remnants of the auditorium. Rusted seats cast eerie shadows, whispering secrets of those who had sat there before me, staring up at the screen with hollow eyes that I fought to rise, coughing against the damp air that wrapped around me like a shroud. Suddenly, the screen erupted to life, glimmering with ethereal images. I was struck by an overwhelming sense of recognition. It was the footage I had recorded earlier, but it was warped. The figures that loomed in the film morphed into twisted versions of myself, distorted and grinning maniacally, celebrating a grotesque spectacle. My throat tightened as I realized their mouths were moving in sync to a dreadful chant. "She's one of us now, she's one of us now." With a gasp, I stumbled back, desperate to escape this torment. Through the haze, I could see the ghostly forms shifting, lost souls trapped in time, their faces fractures of the liveliness they once held. Some appeared sorrowful, others angered, but all wore the same pleading expression, desperate for release. The thick, sanctimonious air vibrated with energy, and then silenced out. A solitary figure stepped into the flickering light, its form clad in ancient tattered garments, long shadows draping like a cloak over its elongated frame. I squinted against the dark, heart racing as it raised a gaunt finger, pointing directly at me. "Your truth must be offered," it croaked, voice rasping like dry leaves. "Only then can the veil be lifted," and the cycle broken. That I swallowed hard, words caught in my throat. Offer a truth? I had come here searching, hoping for answers, never considering what price might come with them. An image sparked in my mind, the last thread of phrasing from the Forum Post, demanding sacrifice. Fear speared through me. "What do you mean?" I managed to breath out, my voice trembling. That IT took a step forward, and suddenly, the entire auditorium reverberated with anguished wails, broken narratives reaching out through me. "Your past, bring it forth. Only then shall the door close, but be warned, the truth may not be the salvation you seek." That my heart pounded as countless memories surged, fragments of guilt and shame, moments long buried in the dust. My breath quickened. Was this my burden? I had spent so much time wrestling with my own darkness, but to bring it forth here felt like surrendering to a horror I couldn't control. The shadowy audience leaned in closer, their faces twisted in eager anticipation. The phrase "soul's lament" echoed in my mind, a drumming heartbeat of fear as their longing for my truth enveloped me, threatening to drown me in its depths. "You chose this," the figure said, its voice a haunting melody. "Now, choose whether you will join us in our endless night, or face the light of what lurks still in your heart." Desperate thoughts whirled as time felt suspended, a plunge between reality and absurdity, a choice resonating through every soul tethered to the shadows around me. And then, as if summoned by a dark command, shadows coalesced before me, rendering the air cold and heavy. Among them emerged a well-known face, a past entwined with my own, a memory set on the edge of a knife, someone I had betrayed and forgotten. "Maya?" I gasped, recognition crashing through me like a wave. Her eyes shone with a haunting mixture of grief and rage, articulating a truth I could no longer ignore. "You can't escape your own faults, Rachel," she said, the syllables dripping with sadness and menace. "And neither can they." I realized what this meant. The looming darkness was not just personal anguish, it was a holding pen for countless others' truths, each tethered to the theater, waiting for someone like me to acknowledge the shadows, to commit the ultimate sacrifice. The admission of their intertwined fates with my own. Shock coursed through me as I felt the collective gaze of the audience pulling at the fabric of my reality, tightening around my throat, begging for release, a chilling reminder that the light I sought might very well lead me deeper into the darkness. And at that moment, the screen behind me flickered again, offering a glimpse of what lay ahead, and I screamed, because the shadows began to close in, the eerie laughter returning, and I realized I wasn't here to find the truth, I was there to become part of it. The screen went black. And in that suffocating silence, a voice whispered, "Welcome to the performance, your act begins now." The silence pulsed around me, an oppressive presence as shadows thickened and the atmosphere grew electric with anticipation. Every heartbeat reverberated through the dim, stifling space, echoing insecurities and weaving together the trauma I had long struggled to forget. Maya's apparition loomed just beyond reach, her gaze fierce yet wounded, compelling me to face my sins. "That we were supposed to be stars, remember?" she whispered, her voice a haunting echo ricocheting off the cracked walls. "But you choose the path of ignorance, and those who ignore the past are doomed to walk in its wake." I shook my head desperately, frantically grasping at the threads of my failing sanity. Maya, lost in the haze of old regrets, pushed forward, the shadows swirling into grotesque figures that danced around her silhouette, spelling out the tragedies of yesteryear. My breath hitched in my throat, glimpses of our dreams emerged in flickers of light and darkness, unearthing specters of laughter and betrayal. None of this should be happening. They couldn't exist, not here, not anywhere. "What do you want from me?" My demand pierced through the shadows, cutting through a veil of remembrance so thick I felt I might suffocate. "I don't belong here." The audience of tortured souls tightened their grip, their collective despair trickling into the crevices of my mind, planting seeds of doubt and guilt where once I had walls of denial. Faces swirled, twisted like marionettes tangled in invisible strings, mouths moving but no words uttered, only silence. Maya's expression darkened, her form flickering like a failing bulb. "You cannot escape, Rachel. We are bound by your choices, by the truth you refuse to own." Her voice soared, resounding with a heartbeat that became the thrum of the theater itself. That in a sudden rush of clarity, I recalled the thread of our friendship, a fragile bond torn apart by ambition and betrayal. My voice caught in my throat once more as fragments of truth cascaded over me, revealing the moment I lost her forever. "I didn't mean to," I started, feeling the edges of my guilt sharpening. "Didn't mean to what?" she pressed, a furious glimmer lighting her eyes. "Leave me to suffer for your dreams?" And now, the dark figure interjected, stepping closer, its face a swirling vortex of shadows. "The performance must begin. Offer your truth. Relinquish your silence, or be consumed by it." Around me, the shadows danced menacingly, each flicker a taunt, a beckoning lure to confess, to expose the core of my soul, to destroy the walls I had spent years building. The audience leaned in, helpless yet eager, their faces merging and splitting, silently collaborating on a macabre requiem for those who once transfixed me. "Will you remain the architect of your own sorrow?" the figure continued, gesturing towards Maya. "Each soul here yearns for liberation, but your truth is the catalyst. What will it be, a revelation or a retreat into the dark?" Desperation coursed through me. At that moment, the theater moaned, creaking under the ancient weight of its stories, unsung and lingering. I felt the temperature plummet, the haunting energy pulling me toward the screen, alive with flickering images that whispered truths I wasn't ready to face. "That I can't." I screamed, trembling as the shadows whispered secrets of my past, the moments of silence when I should have spoken, the decisions whispered in the dark. "I can't tell them." Suddenly, with one violent flicker, the screen depicted Maya's last performance, our final act, where I had let ambition eclipse our friendship and driven her to despair. I could feel the agony of those watching. The audience I once cherished now turned against me, their spectral faces tormented with the pain of betrayal. Each image struck me like daggers: fear, jealousy, and finally, the crushing silence of loss. The air was thick with unrelenting pressure. In that split second, everything chilled to a stillness that no longer felt safe. The shadows paused, and I anticipated a climax, a crescendo of horror. The crescendo of lives held hostage by my choices, all reflected back at me. And then, behind the screen, I heard the sound of nails scraping against wood, mingled with soft, sinister giggles that sliced through the darkness. I pivoted, adrenaline surging as the realization washed over me. I wasn't alone anymore. From beyond the shadows where no light dared venture, unseen figures began to form. They emerged like ghastly wraiths, their mouths stretched in paralyzed screams, freedom trapped by the same spectral grip that restrained me. Eyes glowed in eerie luminescence, filled with accusations and despair. Amaya's image distorted, revealing a fiercer face filled with anger. You must face it, Rachel. Your final act awaits, or we shall all drown in your failure. Before I could gasp, the shadows swirled tighter, weaving around me with unimaginable force, driving me towards the spectral figures. As my vision blurred under the weight of fear, I heard that voice again, a darker echo stretching into the void. Welcome to the performance. Your truth decides their release and yours. Suddenly, I stumbled into the center of the stage beneath the screen, the spotlight flaring to life, casting everything in an unforgiving glare. Footsteps echoed from the rear of the theater, hollow, deliberate, vibrating with a sense of urgency. And just as I turned, the haunting laughter crescendoed into a chaotic symphony, and I realized those were not just ghosts, they were the living, trapped souls of the audience I had once sought to connect with, their faces morphing into familiar ones, drawing nearer. Join us, they jeered, voices rising into a maddening chorus, or become one of us. With a scream lodged in my throat, I found myself at the threshold, teetering between truths unconfessed and shadows forever haunting. And in that moment, amidst the escalating chaos, the lights flickered, the laughter erupted, and I was consumed by darkness. The darkness swallowed me whole, a thick, inky void that clung to every inch of my skin. My heart raced, echoing the panic that coursed through my veins, but the oppressive silence that followed felt even more threatening than my fear. Lost in the abyss, I could hear the spectral laughter reverberating around me, a twisted melody that clawed at the fraying edges of my mind. The pressure mounted, pushing against my chest like the weight of every secret I had ever kept. I felt myself spiraling deeper into the void, the walls of reality closing in. In the midst of that consuming darkness, I couldn't tell if I was alone or if the dark figures I had glimpsed earlier still hovered at my periphery, waiting for me to accept their twisted invitation. And then, as if summoned by my racing thoughts, a flicker of light pierced the suffocating gloom. It grew and morphed into an image. I was once again on that stage, a spotlight blazing down upon me, illuminating every flaw and shame I had ever carried. The reflection showed not just my face, but the ghostly visages of those I had wronged, their eyes hollow, their lips stretched in mirthless smiles. I gasped, "Did you think we wouldn't find you?" Maya's voice sliced through the air, now an echo that resonated not only from her spectral figure but from everywhere, her words a haunting reminder of my past. "We are your nightmares, Rachel, and it's time you acknowledge us." Around me, shadows pulsed and writhed, mutating into a cacophony of grotesque forms. The audience, once familiar and loving, now contorted into faces of horror, each gaze piercing through my bravado. They were no longer just observers, they wore expressions of betrayal and disillusionment, their silent screams wrapped around me like tendrils, squeezing tight. "Face your demons." They howled in unison, voices melding into a ghastly chorus. "Your truth is our freedom." Within the spotlight, a pulse of energy surged through the air, a magnetic call to the depths of my darkest secrets. It was undeniably a ritual, a demand pulsing from the ether, urging me to spill the truth I had buried so deep that it felt larger than myself. Yet, I hesitated. "Just one confession," whispered a voice behind me, dripping with honeyed malice, "and you will know who truly holds the power." I turned slowly, dread coiling like a snake in my stomach. The figure stepped forward, bathed in shadows but with a face that was achingly familiar. My pulse quickened. Tom, my mentor, the one who had guided me through my career but had fallen victim to my ambition. "You crafted this tragedy," he said, the pain evident in his gaze. "And now you must unravel it." With every ounce of my will, I fought against the pull of his words. "I can't," I shouted, my voice breaking. "I have secrets that could destroy lives, and you think that's what we want?" Tom pierced through my defenses. "We want the truth to set you free. Will you let it?" The spotlight dimmed slightly, and for a brief moment, the theater glowed with haunting figures, all victims of my silence. Each face begged for acknowledgement, each name screamed within my mind's abyss that I struggled for breath, choking on the weight of their expectations. No. I can't reveal what I've done, I whispered desperately, feeling the despair swell within the space around me, threatening to consume me as it once had done to Maya. Then your sins will consume you entirely, Maya warned, stepping closer. We're all trapped in this performance, but you have the power to change it. The shadows coalesced, swirling around the stage, teasing at the corners of my vision. Dread clawed at my insides, and I could feel the figures edging closer, brimming with an urgent hunger for clarity. Suddenly, the lights flickered violently, a surge of energy crackling through the air as the figures lunged forward. Their hands reached, grasping for me, fingers stretching like broken branches in a storm. I could feel their desperation, their cries intertwining with my own heart, each thudding beat drowning in chaos. Remember us. The chorus rang out, their voices sharper than blades. Remember what? You did. In a moment of sheer panic, I instinctively reached for the ghostly forms of those I had wronged, and as my fingers made contact, a blinding flash erupted. Time suspended, and I was pulled into a visceral memoria sliver of time I had long avoided. I could see the past replaying itself vividly, but not as I remembered it. This was unfiltered, raw, and painfully real, and in that harrowing vision, I finally understood. Each sin, each betrayal was not just a moment lost, it was a binding contract with the darkness I now faced. The choices I refused to acknowledge had birthed the shadows surrounding me. As clarity flooded my mind, the cacophony reached a deafening peak, and the audience of vengeful spirits receded momentarily, as if poised to unleash some greater horror upon me. But in that fleeting clarity, just as I was ready to speak, the theater shook violently. The walls cracked, and the ground trembled, a deep rumble emanating from the shadows themselves. The laughter morphed into agonizing howls, piercing my eardrums, and just as I opened my mouth to confess, a grotesque shadow lunged from the corner of the stage, fingers like twisted claws snatching at the wavering truth I had summoned. I gasped as it grasped me. Pain flooded through me, leaving my body ensnared, and as the shadows converged, I realized in horror that I wouldn't be the one confessing. I was now becoming a part of the performance. Murmurs of regret spiraled around me as the last vestiges of light flickered out, plunging the theater into utter darkness, leaving only the echo of fading screams, and I felt an overwhelming dread wash over me. Had unwittingly opened a door that would never close. Something ancient and hungry was coming for my soul. The ground beneath me quivered, and the tangible sensation of dread coiled tighter around my bones. The walls of the theater splintered, fragments of shadow peeling away like the skin of a dying animal. The air crackled with a suffocating energy, a miasma of agony and despair. Gone was the ethereal glow of the stage lights. The theater was now awkwardly illuminated by flashes of contorted faces, each flash of light revealing a hellish tableau of despair. With every pulse of adrenaline, the essence of the nightmares grew thicker, more visceral. I could feel them, no longer just apparitions but palpable entities, swirling around me like a tempest of vengeful spirits in search of their lost peace. I was suffocating in their collective anguish. Confess. Confess. The shadows groaned, their unified voice drumming in my ears. Release us. I stumbled backward on the now rotting floor, feeling the damp wood beneath my fingertips, each splintering sound echoing the hollowness inside me. My instinct screamed at me to run, to escape this maddening fate, but the claws of those figures gripped my consciousness too real, to present a chorus of torment singing the song of my failures. Then suddenly, a figure emerged from the billowing shadows, translucent but undeniably vivid. It was Tom, his face transformed into a grotesquerie, torn by despair and the revelation of my betrayal. You thought you could seal us away, Rachel? He warned, voice hauntingly familiar yet filled with anguish. You're bound to this place, tangled in the web of your own deceit. You think the past is buried? It never truly leaves. As my heart raced, in a desperate attempt to suppress the dark realization, I turned away from him, trying to shield myself from his revelations. But the moment I shifted, the theater warped, twisting into memories I feared the most. I was thrust back into the suffocating atmosphere of my past, the moments I had shuffled aside, jagged memories of false promises, desperate actions fueled by ambition, and the crushing guilt that followed. Each scene played out agonizingly before my eyes, like a film projected onto the cracked screen, flickering in sync with the pulse of the haunted theater. Maya appeared, her eyes wide with sorrow as she silently condemned me for letting that darkness fester. You were supposed to save us, her lips mouthed, though no sound escaped. She faded, replaced by another, each whisper of regret harmonizing into an unbearable hymn. Face it. The chorus implored, their tones resolute. You know how we suffered. Suddenly, the spotlight reignited, but it was no longer warm. It was a blinding, accusatory gaze that bored deep into my being. The figures around me morphed again, taking on shapes I recognized too well, all those who I had wronged, their faces merging into an unspeakable mass of grief that I screamed, an eruption of horror spilling from my lips. I didn't mean to. I tried to help. But my words stumbled, caught in the churning maelstrom of anguish and guilt. A malicious laugh rippled through the air, shattering the silence. Help? It mocked, weaving through the shadows like poison. You only helped yourself, Rachel. You feasted on despair and left us for dead. The shadows surged forward, their forms indistinct yet undeniably powerful. I staggered back, but the air thickened, trapping me in place as the energy of the theater intensified, building toward a cataclysm. I realized the walls were closing in, the shadows tightening their grip around my throat like invisible severed hands. Then, from the very stage that had once been my sanctuary, I saw it, an object emerging from the depths of the darkened corridors, an ancient film reel flickering with haunting images, a ghostly light illuminating the truth buried within. My pulse thundered painfully in my ears as the realization dawned. This reel contained the very sins I tried to forget, the last recording of my betrayal, waiting for me to play out its sordid tale. Turn it on, the shadows hissed, their voices merging into a siren song that promised both knowledge and destruction. Let it reveal your secrets. Let it consume you. My heart raced, the fear of the revelations clawing at my mind. But I was rooted in place, each pulse of the theater vibrating with dark anticipation. The figures drew closer, their haunting expressions demanding resolution, their suffering echoing off the warped walls of guilt that I reached for the reel, fingers trembling as I flipped the switch. The projector choked to life, the sound scratching under the intense pressure of my mounting terror. The film began to flicker, shadows spilling out of the screen and into my very being. At that moment, the ground shattered beneath me, and the shadows unleashed all at once, a vortex of memory and loss, pulling me deeper into forgotten nightmares. Within the dissonance of characters unraveling, I felt myself being sucked into the film, a voyeur to my own story, trapped in a cycle of reflection, unable to escape. As the images projected the horrific truth of my past unraveling, I realized with chilling clarity, the reel would not only expose my secrets but also bind me to the theater forever, a puppet trapped in my own cruel performance. And just before the darkness fully enveloped me, a guttural roar echoed from somewhere within the depths. The entity of regret was not done yet. It clawed toward the surface, a monstrous manifestation of all I had tried to deny, and in that harrowing moment, I finally understood I was not merely the watched, I was the haunting. Then, a hand gripped my shoulder from behind, cold and unforgiving. There was someone else trapped beside me in this unholy retribution. Are you ready, Rachel? It whispered, and I turned to face my own reflection, twisted in horror. The projector flickered violently, illuminating the dark recesses of the theater in violent bursts. My heart raced as the cold grip tightened around my shoulder, and I turned just in time to see the face of someone I recognized. It was a reflection of my own haunted visage, twisted and grotesque, lined with shadows that mimicked my worst fears. What have you done? I gasped, my voice a mere breath against the suffocating atmosphere. The figure bore my features, yet it was drenched in sorrow and malice. What you've always done, Rachel, trying to outrun your past. But here, in the theater, you cannot escape, it hissed, as if tasting the bitterness of every word. You were the architect of all this. The shadows swirled thicker around us, morphing into the faces of those from the reel, the tortured souls I had betrayed. They pressed closer, their whispers merging into a cacophony of anguish. You sealed us in, and now the price must be paid. I stumbled backward, trying to escape the hypnotic pull of my own reflection. Despair washed over me as I turned my gaze back to the screen. The images on the film shifted cruelly, revealing moments of atrocities I had buried deep within my conscience. Maya's face twisted in agony, Tom's mouth gasping for breath, their eyes pleading for release. Each snapshot was like a dagger, revealing the festering wounds I had tried so hard to ignore. Play it through, the figure taunted, its lips curling into a smile that was devoid of warmth. "You'll see how beautiful oblivion can be," the shadows swelled, a living entity that pulsed with malevolence, and the air thickened with their wrath. It felt like I was drowning in a sea of despair, the walls of the theater closing in tighter, bending to the will of the spirits, as if they sought to crush me beneath their collective weight. Suddenly, the screen sputtered, and I caught sight of a forgotten moment, a fleeting memory of laughter that curled around dread like a vice. I saw myself, younger, standing in the dimly lit hallway of the theater, the air thick and electric with youthful ambition. But something terrible was lurking in the shadows, a malignant presence unraveling the thread of my past. As I analyzed the fleeting image, the real twisted and darkened, distorting into a grotesque vision. The memory morphed, the joyful laughter dwindling into desperate cries, echoing from the very corners of the room. I covered my ears, but the wails of the lost souls clawed into my mind, shrill and incessant. Between moments of horror, I glimpsed something lurking in the shadows, the same cold figure with eyes like endless pits, watching, waiting. It seemed to grow closer with every passing second, feeding off my terror while drawing strength from the anguish of those around me. "Do you see it yet?" The doppelganger mocked, mimicking my voice with venomous glee. An unholy communion festering in the heart of the theater ritual that binds us all. Suddenly, the lights dimmed to a near-complete abyss, and I felt suffocated by a sudden chill. It was as if the very essence of despair infiltrated my lungs, filled with remnants of what had been lost, of dreams that now lay shattered within these forsaken walls. I breathed heavily, every inhalation tainted with bitterness. "What do you want from me?" I cried, desperation twisting my throat. The figure grinned wider, its teeth glinting like shards of glass. "For you to acknowledge the truth that you are as much a part of our suffering as we are." Then the projector started to malfunction, distorting the images further until the film transformed into a perpetual loop of darkness, a void that seemed intent on consuming everything. Panic ripped through me as I felt the inexorable pull, the dread of being dragged into that abyss overwhelming. Suddenly, a blinding flash erupted from the screen, forcing me to shut my eyes. In that moment of darkness, I felt something shift and reshape around me. The whispers turned to screams, echoing a single name, drenched in venomous betrayal: Rachel. As the light returned, the theater warped, stretching like an alien landscape. I began to see figures emerging from shadows, but they were not the souls of the lost, they were reflections of me during the darkest moments of my life. Each visage screamed accusations, embodying my guilt and despair, and then, from within the tangle of relentless regrets, the horrendous truth finally struck. "Shatter the real," my doppelganger urged, a manic urgency rising in its voice. "Free us all, or join us forever in silence." Before I could fully comprehend the words, the ground beneath me trembled violently. As the shadows surged, I saw the edges of the film reel unraveling, threads breaking apart like fragile silk. Everything erupted in chaos, and in that discord, I realized my only option. I had to break the cycle, shatter the illusion, and release the cursed souls bound by my treachery. With a final surge of strength, I lunged forward, prepared to destroy the mechanism that had condemned us all. But before I could reach the projector, a voice erupted from the shadows, low and guttural, that chilled me to the bone. "You think you understand the cost? You're too late, Rachel. The true horror has just begun." And then, the theater shifted again, ushering forth an unseen terror from the darkness, a presence so malevolent it made the very shadows tremble in submission, plunging me into an endless night of horrors. I hesitated, my breath hitching in the stagnant air, caught in a maelstrom of confusion and dread. The shadows writhed, mocking me as I processed the wretched truth pulsating through the theater's core. Could I really shatter the film reel? End the torment that had gripped both me and the lost souls, forever entwined in this cursed cycle? Before I could answer that question, the presence drew closer, creeping from the depths where light could not touch. It was a force of nature, thick, suffocating, much like the many regrets I had buried deep within me. I could feel its breath, cold and rancid, prickling the hairs on my arms. Every flicker of light played tricks on my mind. The shadows twisted, mocking, a grotesque symphony of sorrow teasing at the edges of my sanity. The figure, a warped reflection of myself, urged me forward. "Do it!" It shrieked, the echoes of countless betrayals resonating in that voice. "End the lies that bind us." But as I advanced towards the projector, a deep dread rooted me to the spot. The moment felt immemorial, caught in a web of time that transcended reality. I was on the scene of an infinite struggle, a confrontation between my hidden truth and the world's overwhelming agony. The whispers morphed into chants, a relentless tide of voices all demanding the same thing, urging me to confess what I had hidden, what I had neglected, what I had disregarded. Face it. They cried. We are your truth. We are your past. I could feel their desperation clawing at my mind, tendrils dragging me toward the brink of suffocation. I stumbled, racked with uncertainty as memories of my wrongdoings coiled around me like snakes, hissing accusations from the dark corners of my mind. I had silenced these souls for too long. And then I understood the reel wasn't merely a mechanism for entertainment, it was a conduit for torture, a reminder of my transgressions. It had bound every shadow to my soul, every scream intertwined with my desires. Rachel, free us. Maya's visage surged amidst the turmoil, her face a mixture of pain and longing, the very manifestation of my regret. I heard her call for release amidst the cacophony of voices. They linger because of you. Save yourself by saving us. That flash of recognition pierced through me, cutting through the paralysis of my fear. I realized the revelation resided not in escape but in acceptance. I needed to confront my choices, to expose my sins, or I, too, would be swallowed whole by this relentless darkness. All right. I shouted, rallying against the torment pulling me downward. You want my truth? I'll give it to you. With all the strength I could muster, I lunged towards the projector, yanking it from its precarious perch. Metal screeched in protest, echoing my internal struggle. Shivers coursed through my spine as reality distorted around me, the air thickening with anticipation and dread as the mechanical gears creaked. And then I smashed it to the ground. The sound was deafening, the shattering glass and splintering wood erupting like a storm. The reverberation struck the very core of the theater. The walls trembled, shadows convulsed, and in that instant, clarity pierced through the veil of chaos. A warped vision erupted, a kaleidoscope of memory spun into grotesque images that screamed the ugly truth. Each ghostly form revealed their pain, their stories interspersed with images that afflicted my own heart. They twisted together in horrifying recognition, me past misdeeds intertwining with their own anguished moments, binding our fates in perpetual torment. You wanted the truth? I gasped, watching as shadows surged forward, their shapes churning until they became indistinguishable, all sewn together in a quilt of despair and accusation. Here it is. I was selfish, I didn't save Maya. I should have been there for Tom. I let ambition consume my soul. The figures paused, ethereal gasps cascading through the void. But with that admission, I felt no liberation. The weight of sorrow warred with my soul, as it was revealed. The loss was not mine to bear alone. It reached into the very fabric of my being, a realization that paralyzed me. They weren't just lost souls, they were pieces of me, echoes of my past. In their release, I saw my path toward freedom tapering but not entirely paved. Your truth, a voice echoed, the very embodiment of darkness, teasing at the edge of comprehension. Your truth will save none. An icy grip closed around my heart, sending tendrils of fear dancing through my veins. The shadow galaxy coalesced, shimmering with malice. Even now, even after this confession, I was ensnared by an ancient hunger that demanded sacrifice not simply of the heart, but of the very essence of my being. Join us. The echoes crescendoed again, this time not in agony but in anticipation, their faces merging into a singular entity that locked onto me with hollow, gleaming eyes. Embrace what you've become or perish in hollow silence. Just as I felt the darkness closing in, a flicker of light breached the shadows, illuminating a path, hope intertwined with fear. I could either succumb to this nightmare or rise above it, accept my past yet reject the power it wielded over me. Never. I cried, heart pounding in defiance. I will not join you in this eternal suffering. With that final declaration, the shadows erupted into chaos, a feral storm of wrath and anguish crashing against the walls of the theater. But the realization dawned within a pulsating heart where my truth lay waiting. I would not be a vessel for others' pain, nor could I exist here forever. The figures hesitated, their relentless chant fading momentarily into silence. I seized my moment, channeling every ounce of strength from my being. I am here. I am free. The tumultuous shadows recoiled, swirling and stretching, as if the very essence of darkness tried to wrestle the light I claimed. And in that pivotal moment, I saw not only their twisted faces but my own reflection shifting through the chaos. There, amidst the rage and anguish, I glimpsed a revelation, the opportunity to transcend. I choose to forgive, I proclaimed, and to my astonishment, the darkness abated, as if recoiling from the light that burst forth from within me. I forgive myself. I am more than my mistakes. I break this curse tonight. The theater trembled yet again, the dimensions of the void shaking as the energy shifted. The darkness began to recede, gnashing against my newfound will, forcing the shadows that once terrified me to scatter. Suddenly, a shockwave pulsed through the air, snapping the links that bound the souls in me, leaving a void where dread had once gripped tight. I held my breath, standing amid the echoes of battle-lost spirits flickering out like dying stars. Complete the cycle, the echoes hissed, a pained wail reverberating, threatening to assert its rage again. But amid that tumult, I sought the floor that echoed the undying cries, transcending them with every ounce of bravery I could muster, and with one final cry: I am not your prisoner any longer. The darkness coiled fiercely, but the light I carried surged through, dispelling the suffocating shadows until nothing remained but Puridia's sacred promise to recognize my past yet refuse to let it define me. The void echoed with a distant wail as the theater itself vibrated, a mournful sound of souls freed from bondage. And then it fell silent, every shadow disintegrated in a cascade of light that illuminated the emptiness of the room. The theater, once a cradle of despair, began to tremble and warp until it imploded, but just as reality dissolved like ash upon the wind, I felt a presence linger. The remnants of past ties pulled at the edges of my heart, a violent reminder that while I had dispelled the shadows of the theater, the grievances of my past would always be in view. And in the aftermath of the shadow's retreat, the electric silence broke, allowing a voice to echo across the space, the voice of the one thing I feared the most, the eternal echo of my own choices. You will never forget, Rachel. You can hide, but you cannot escape the weight of your truth. It will always haunt you. As the remnants of the theater crumbled, I realized that darkness would linger not as a shadow, but as a stark reminder of what I had faced. I had escaped, yes, but my journey was only just beginning, and in that realization, I stood alone beneath a starless sky, unmoored yet free. The haunting whispers of the theater now an echo in the corridors of my mind, both a warning and a reminder. In the stillness of that moment, a chilling thought gripped me, one that would pulse through my veins for all eternity. What if this darkness was not the end but the doorway to something far more insidious, waiting patiently in the corners of my forgotten dreams? As the chilling wind swept across the night, I understood I had closed one door, yet there were always more to follow, and I could feel the shadows lingering, breathing behind every creak and groan, waiting, always waiting.